Cam Little kicking the longest field goal in NFL history with a 68-yard field goal. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL top 10s for Monday. All right, welcome to this Monday morning. We had a incredible weekend of football. Sunday there's some amazing games, some games that are perplexing. We'll talk about them through the week. You know, how do some teams lose that you don't expect, and so forth. But also, history was made on Sunday as far as field goal. We'll talk about that as well. A lot of fun facts this week to talk about. So in this episode today, we will talk about Sunday's games, some of the top 10s that teams were able to achieve, players on teams, moving into the top 10 all-time for their team, as well as some players who moved up the top 10 in the NFL, all-time NFL numbers. And then we'll have the number one field goal kicker in the history of the NFL. We'll talk about that as well. So that's all we have to look forward today. So let's get going on this because there's quite a few different things to check out. So we'll start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who did win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Wow, what a game. Crazy in a lot of ways. Trevor Lawrence threw a terrible interception in the first half down at the goal line. They were 2 yards away. I don't know what he's looking at. Two defenders right in the way of his receiver. And anyway, it was interception. That game was tight. The second half, the game went crazy as far as scoring. Raiders end up winning that game, though, 30-29. In that game, after that terrible mistake by Trevor Lawrence, he did have a pretty good game. He ended up rushing the ball twice. One was on a longer run, and then a short jump over the pile for a touchdown. So he had two rushing touchdowns, I should say. So he came into the week with 16 rushing touchdowns for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is good enough for ninth. He got two more, which jumps him all the way up to tie for sixth with James Robinson with 18. So he's up there now in sixth. Stacey Mack has 19. So that's up next for him. And Travis Etienne is in fourth with 20. He did not have any. Travis Etienne had a good game, but no rushing touchdowns. So he's set at 20. Trevor Lawrence is now at 18. So good game for him after that initial blunder. All right, let's look at also the Jaguars. Josh Hines-Allen had been sitting on 53.5 sacks for a little bit. He got 1.5 sacks in this game to tie Tony Bracken's all-time Jacksonville Jaguars in most sacks in a career. So now Tony Brackens, who played 1996 to 2003, they both have 55 sacks. So very good there. That's a big lead over anybody else. The next best is 37.5. That's Yannick Ngakoue. So now he'll just needs a half a sack. Josh Hines-Allen needs a half a sack, and he moves into first all by himself. All right, let's shift over to Houston, who did not win their game. Stroud went out with an injury. We'll see how, I think it was a concussion. We'll see what happens there. But in that game, Nico Collins went into the game needing 5 receptions to catch Arian Foster for most receptions by Houston Texan. He got 7 in the game, so he now has 251, which puts him to 5th all-time among Houston Texans. Arian Foster has 249, so he passed him by a couple. Now, there is a big gap. He needs 75 more to move to 4th with 300. Kevin Walter, who played from 2006 to 2012, has 326. So a little ways for Nico Collins. He probably won't do it this year. It'll have to probably be next year. He'll have a chance to catch a couple of players. Long way from Andre Johnson, who leads the Houston Texans with 1,012 receptions. All right. Now, also for the Houston Texans, Will Anderson continues to play so well. Came into the game with 22 sacks in his career. He's only been playing for a few years here, since 2023. But he got 1 sack in this game. He now has 23. He's tied with Jonathan Grenard, who was with the team until 2023. They both have 23 sacks. So next up for Will Anderson is Antonio Smith, who was with the team from 2009 to 2016. He's got 27.5. So he needs 4.5 sacks. The way he's been playing, I don't doubt that he gets that sometime this season. Not sure how long it'll take, 3, 4, 5 games, but I think he'll get there. And that'll be next for him, Antonio Smith at 27.5. All right. Now, Denver Broncos, they pulled a game out. Tough game for them, but they did win it. What was the score of that game? Denver Broncos game. Oh, yeah, that's right. They beat the Texans 18-15. And that's another game. They scored 11 points in the fourth quarter. This is another game where they come from behind to win. Amazing. But anyway, the Broncos win it 18-15. And this was in Houston too. But Cortland Sutton only needed 1 reception. He was tied with Steve Watson with 36 receiving touchdowns. He just needed 1 to move ahead of him. He got the 1. In fact, his 1 reception was a receiving touchdown. So that's the only catch he had in the game. So not too good, but it did help him move into a tie for 8th all-time with Vance Johnson with 37 receiving touchdowns. Johnson played in the 80s and 90s, and they both have 37 now. So next up for Cortland Sutton in 7th is Riley Odoms with 41 receiving touchdowns. So I don't know. Cortland Sutton could get it this year, obviously, he only needs 4 more, and in 9 more games, there's a chance that he can catch Riley Odoms, who played in the 70s and 80s as well. Cortland Sutton, 37 receiving touchdowns. All right. For the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost to the Buffalo Bills, I really don't like either team. But this was a game to see how good were the Buffalo Bills, who had not beaten a winning team this year, and how good were the Kansas City Chiefs, because everybody was raving as to how great they were. They're getting their team back together. Everything was putting them on the fast track to the Super Bowl. That's how, if you listen to the commentators, they seem to think that's where the Kansas City Chiefs were now. So, lo and behold, the Buffalo Bills beat them 28-21. So I had Kansas City Chiefs in my top 10, and I did not have the Buffalo Bills. I will be reversing that and apologize to Buffalo Bill fans, because I was just doubter. I was a doubter until they beat a team with a winning record, which they did yesterday. But in that game, Kareem Hunt only needed 22 yards to catch Mike Garrett for 8th all-time in rushing yards for the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 49. So he now has, back up on that. Kareem Hunt was tied with Curtis McClinton for the exact same yardage. So he just needed a yard, to be honest. And he got 49 yards. So he now has 3,173. So he's in 9th place all-time, Kansas City's Chiefs rushing yards, most rushing yards. So next up for him is Mike Garrett, who has 3,246. So he needs 73 yards in the next game to catch Mike Garrett. That's probably all he'll do. After that, it's Marcus Allen, who I always find difficult to see on a Kansas City Chiefs top 10 all-time rushing list, when all I can think of him as an Oakland Raider. So to see him on the Kansas City Chiefs as well is just strange. But he's on the top 10 there. He's number 1 running back for the Raiders. All right, Kareem Hunt, number 9 all-time, Kansas City Chiefs rushing yards. Now, let's move this one here back to later. Next up, got some charts out of the whack here. Let me get to this. Sorry about that. All right, Detroit Lions, who did not win. Unbelievable. This is a game I really thought that the Lions had kind of got their act together, and they didn't. They lost 27-24 at home. It was a fascinating game. This is one of those games I just did not think the Lions would lose it, but they did. I mean, you got McCarthy coming in for his first game back. I just didn't expect this, but they lost. They had no running game really. The Lions, they didn't have a passing game either, honestly, much of it. But Jamar Gibbs, he needed 7 yards rushing to catch James Stewart to move into the top 10 all time in Detroit Lions rushing yards. Well, he only got 25, but that was enough to move into the top 10. So he now has 2,908 yards rushing. It was just not a good game for him. Good enough to move into the top 10, but it's hard to be thrilled about that when you lose a game. Next up for him is Kevin Jones, who has 3,067. So he's going to have a huge game to catch him. Probably take him a couple games to catch him, especially if he's only going to get 25 yards. It was just a very off game for the Lions. I don't really understand what happened. I have not had a chance to watch it, but I will. And maybe we'll see something that explains this game. Minnesota has a good defense, but I still did not think they would be able to stop the Lions, who averages over 30 points a game. Well, they were. So a loss for the Lions. All right. Also for the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson, been on the team since 2022, now had another tackle for loss, so he's got 37, which puts him into a tie with Cliff Averill, who played from 2008 to 2012 with 37 apiece. So they're tied for 8th all time. Next up will be Corey Redding, who played in the 2000s, early 2000s. He's got 43, so that's 6 that Aiden Hutchinson needs. That could be a little while before he gets to that. One a game, maybe. If he gets a couple a game, anywhere from 4 to 7 games, I suppose, before Hutchinson catches him. But he's such a good player, signed that massive contract. So I'm sure the Lions are expecting a lot of sacks and tackles for loss out of him. All right. Now for the winning team, the Minnesota Vikings. Amazing. They won that game, like I said, 27-24 over the Lions, which is good for them because they lose that game. They just fall out. It really can make them difficult in that division to come back and win. And with their win, and the Green Bay Packers losing, it's going to be a very, very tight division going into next week. But in that game, Justin Jefferson needed 3 receptions to move into 4th all time in receptions. And he got 6 in the game. I'm just checking one thing real quick just to make sure. Yeah. So he got 6 receptions. He actually passed Adam Thielen, who's on the team, who has 539. Justin Jefferson now has 542 receptions. That puts him in the 3rd all time in Minnesota Vikings history. He needs 45 receptions, which I'm sure he'll get sometime this season, to catch Randy Moss, who was with the team from 1998 to 2010. He has 587. He's number 2 all time. So Justin Jefferson is probably will be in the number 2 position going into next year and several years after that, because the number 1 is Chris Carter, played from 1990 to 2001, but he's got 1,004 receptions. So Justin Jefferson's just a little over halfway to catching Chris Carter. But he's been averaging, almost 100 receptions a year. So if he can maybe get to 600 this year, and in another 4 years, he catches Chris Carter. But it's going to take some time. All right. Now for the Los Angeles Rams in their game, which they won. Their game was, what was the score of that game as I look it up here? Oh, yeah. You know, there's a lot of games you're trying to catch them all, but they won handily, and you knew they were going to win. They beat the Saints 34-10. It wasn't much of a game, honestly. The Saints, they're just waiting to be the number one pick in the draft, and whoever they have to compete for that. But in that game, which was a good game overall, but a negative stat for Matthew Stafford, he was sacked 2 times in the game. He needed only 1 sack to tie Jared Goff, who he flip-flopped places with when Stafford was the quarterback for the Lions. Goff was the quarterback for the Rams, and they swapped players. But he did catch Goff now in sacks. He had 2. He has 130 sacks as a Los Angeles Rams, which puts him into 5th all-time as the most sacked quarterback. Next up for him is Tony Banks, who only played for the team from 96 to 98, but he had 132 times he was sacked. So he needs 2 more sacks, Stafford does, and he'll catch Tony Banks for 4th. Only halfway to catching Roman Gabriel, who had 263. The only negative, probably one of the few negative things for that in that game, because Stafford in that game was, well, his incredible self. Only had 8 incompletions, 24 for 32, 281 yards, and another 4 touchdowns. He's leading the NFL. He's crushing the NFL in touchdown passes right now. All right, which we'll talk about when we get to the season numbers. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks in their game, Jared Reed only needed half a sack to move into the tie for the top 10, and he was able to get it. He got a half a sack. He now has 35 sacks in his career. Now, he's been playing longer. He's been with the team since 2016, but he tied Frank Clark with 35 sacks. So he moves into the top 10 all-time for Seattle Seahawks in sacks. Next up for him in 9th is Rufus Porter, who played back in the 80s and 90s. He's got 37.5. So he needs another 2.5 sacks. I don't know if he'll get it. Honestly, it's taken him a little while just to get this half a sack. So we'll see. But still, make the top 10. All right. Let's see. That was it for team stats. Now let's look at some of these all-time stats for the NFL. And a couple of these we've been watching every week because Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey continue to make waves as far as running backs go in receiving stats. So in this game, and Alvin Kamara is just creeping up. Christian McCaffrey's been just leapfrogging up this list past Alvin Kamara. Wasn't even in the top 10 starting the season, and he's number 7 right now as far as receiving yards. Alvin Kamara just needed 2 yards to tie Roger Craig for 8th all-time, and Alvin Kamara had 1 reception for 3 yards, so he passed Roger Craig. Alvin Kamara now has 4,912 receiving yards. So as a running back, that's number 8 all-time in the NFL. Now, number 7 is Christian McCaffrey, who has 5,092. He had 67 this game. He's just kept him in 7th, but it did push him closer to Tiki Barber, who's in 6th with 5,183. So I don't know that Christian McCaffrey will catch Tiki Barber next week, but I think in 2 weeks, 2 more games, I think Christian McCaffrey will move into 6th all-time in receiving yards. He does need 91 next week, which is asking a lot. Not that it's impossible for McCaffrey, because he's actually often is getting more yards receiving than he is rushing. Not in this last game, though. All right, so they're both in the top 10. 2 players currently playing in the top 10 all-time in running back receiving yards. Another one possibly would have been Austin Eckler, who had that terrible injury that knocked him out of this list. He is, though, on the all-time running back receiving touchdown list. Austin Eckler's 5th, tied for 4th, actually, with 30. But here's another category where Christian McCaffrey's been just running up this list. He had another receiving touchdown yesterday, so he now has 33, which puts him into second all by himself. He was tied with Darren Sproles going into this game with 32. He now has 33. Only one left for him to catch is Marshall Faulk, who has 36. So 3 more receiving touchdowns. It's possible the way he's been playing, and they've been using him as a receiver, he could get it this year. 3, we'll see. But he has, like I said, been flying up every category: receptions, touchdowns, receiving yards, just climbing this list. It's been incredible to watch him. All right. Now, one more, or we got 2 more here. Davante Adams, talking about somebody moving up the list fast. Davante Adams had another 2 receiving touchdowns this past Sunday. I mean, he came into the season behind Mike Evans, who has 106 right now, and who is injured. He caught Mike Evans. He passed Mike Evans. And in 2 games, he caught Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez is in 8th place all time in the NFL with receiving touchdowns with 111. Davante Adams had 2 more. He is now tied with Tony Gonzalez with 111 receiving touchdowns. That's just incredible. Next up for him is another tight end. Tony Gonzalez is the guy he tight end. And Antonio Gates, who played from 2003 to 2018, he's got 116. And at the pace he's going, I think Davante Adams could catch him. He needs 5 more. You would think it's asking a lot, but he's, like I said, he's had 2 games here where he's had 2. So we'll just see what happens. And, Stafford is looking for him. And I said this at the beginning of the year, but Davante Adams, he may not get a lot of receptions during the game, but when they're near the end zone, Stafford's looking for him, and somehow Adams is open, or he just makes a great catch for a touchdown. So we'll see what happens, but he only needs 5 more touchdowns to catch Antonio Gates. All right. Now this last stat we'll look at, and this is the all-time record for longest field goal. Cam Little, in the game yesterday against the Oakland Raiders, it was at the end of the first half. It was a pitiful game. The Raiders are losing the Jaguars are losing 6-0. Raiders had scored a touchdown, missed the extra point, which was critical in this game and why the Jaguars won. With hardly any time on the clock, the Jaguars are able to get the ball around the 50-yard line. They bring Cam Little in to kick a field goal. It's a 68-yard attempt. Cam Little makes the field goal. The coach runs out on the field to hug him. 68 yards. So Cam Little kicks the longest field goal in history, a 68-yarder, to actually score the 3 points that they had in the first half. So Cam Little's 68-yarder is 2 better than Justin Tucker's record of 66. And Cam Little would have made that field goal probably at least from 70 yards. It's cleared the crossbar easily, and it was a very good kick. I mean, it wasn't like it just slid in there. He made it easily. But an incredible kick. Now, on this list, when you're looking at all these top 10, there's actually 6 players who have kicked a 63-yarder. And then you have a couple with 64 yards and 2 more with 65. And then Justin Tucker was 66 and Cam Little was 68-yarder. But on the list, now Brandon Aubrey, who's the guy they talk about all the time, he's going to be the guy that's going to do it because he's on this list twice. He's kicked a 65 and a 64-yarder. And he kicked a 64-yarder earlier this year. But nope, it's Cam Little. Brandon, also Chase McLaughlin kicked a 65-yarder this year. So you got some long field goals made already. 3 of the top 10, in fact, 3 of the top 5 are this season. So that's the stat we'll end with. Cam Little kicking the longest field goal in NFL history with a 68-yard field goal. All right, that is a wrap for this episode. A lot of stats to look at, very fun ones. You know, if you're a Jaguar fan like I am, Cam Little kicking that could have been a catalyst that carried them the rest of that game because they ended up winning at 30-29. No help from the defense, hardly, it seemed like, but good otherwise. All right, appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe. You can find me on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL, also on all your podcast sites, Apple, Spotify, and whatever app you may use. You can also contact me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com if you want to leave me an email. And again, thanks for listening. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Monday. Until tomorrow, I'm out.